This is Glashütte, Germany, a small town of 7,000 people with no traffic lights, a couple of restaurants, and a pace of living amongst the locals that is quiet enough at night you can hear a pin drop down the road. Yet underneath its quaint exterior is a town that is a manufacturing powerhouse that is at the heart of Germany's acclaimed and storied watchmaking. I traveled over 4,000 miles from Cleveland, Ohio to visit a brand that calls this small town home, that in turn is not only one of Glashütte's finest, but also serves as helping to embody a watchmaking spirit of an entire nation. This is Glashütte Original. So Roland, thank you very much for opening your doors up to us. Now we are in a storied region. We're in a mecca of German watchmaking, Glashütte. What does this region mean broadly for German watchmaking, but also for Glashütte Original?
The region for Germany is like, we are in Glashütte, we are top and we are number one in watchmaking. It's the valley where we do, all watches, watch parts produced here. Especially in Glashütte Original, we do the parts in-house, and this is a very long tradition. For me, that's the only part in Germany where we can produce this quality watches.
What are we going to look at today? So we're in your main facility here, right in the heart of Glashütte. What are we going to see?
We're going to see the departments, different departments. I'm going to show you where all the watchmaking starts. It's with tool making, it's with the main plate, with the raw material. And then we go up in different departments. We do our screws, we do the stone setting, even engraving. This is all done in-house. You will see, you will discover, and then you understand what means, what is the big term watchmaking manufacturing.
So Roland, where are we at now?
We are in it's a part of the tool making, but here we do all our stampings. It means this is the beginning of the movement. We have parts here, we have brass parts, and we stamp them that they can go in the different departments for further work, for further engraving, for further drilling and milling.
So the important point here is this is true manufacturing, right? So you're starting with raw materials. You are looking at things like base plates, wheels, bridges. This is all being produced on site in the same facility that the watchmaker is going to ultimately put this and assemble this watch to, and send it off to a customer.
Absolutely. We are here in the basement because everything starts here. It's very oily, it's like very loud, and you see it's a very heavy tooling here. So this is really the beginning, and this is also worth to show because not many people know that a movement starts from a piece of brass like this. And then we start with this piece, we have it on a big roll, we cut it, it's stamped, and then later on we go and we do the drilling and the milling.
And you're going to make all those small little cuts for holes, and in the base plate you're also going to make those recessed areas for things like barrels, wheels. So you're really getting down, and this is where you talk about 95% of what you're producing is all being done here.
So there you see that's a tiny wheel, or this is for watchmaking actually. That's a big wheel. That's a huge wheel, but this is all done in-house. There's no teeth on it now, so this is in another department where we cut all the teeth in the wheels. We will discover even more later. And
you're also producing your own dials here as well, which is one of the common things that brands are going to outsource. So that's also remarkable. So you're doing these plates here.
We are doing the plates here. This is for us something really special we need to still develop, but the main parts are already done in-house.
So Roland, as a manufacturer, there's a lot of custom work that needs to be done, both with the parts themselves, but also the tools required for those parts, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why we are in the grinding department here, where we do not only parts for the watch, we do also the whole tools. This part it's like a screwdriver, where we can adjust the balance wheel screw for the right adjustment and the timing of the watch. This tool, that's a little key, and this key is like 2.1 millimeters long, and we have a diameter of 0.2 in the middle. There's a hole in the middle and the square where we can go onto the screw and we can unscrew.
So moving that weight around with that screw is going to allow the balance to either speed up or slow down with its oscillation and swing.
Absolutely. So now we are in a department where we set all the stones and all the rubies in the main plates or in the different module plates. And what we do here at Glashütte Original is we do our ball bearing system. This is a part, it helps us even, you know, about the rules in Glashütte to name a brand or a manufacturer.
There's a standard set to be a Glashütte watch.
Standard Glashütte watch. This is a requirement of 50% in-house, and we do almost the double in-house. What we see now with the ball bearing system is that we do all single balls into the system with a little plate. It keeps the distance, and later on we press it. Now we have the ball bearing system set, and we need to put it in this skeleton rotor plate. This is done by hand because you need to have the feeling for the pressure you put on the machine.
So making sure everything's aligned. You have that.
Everything is lined, so you can even we can even drill it to see if it works properly. Now you're gonna see that we screw the rotor plate, included the ball bearing system, to the 21 karat gold mass.
What I like about this too, this is this fusion of functionality with beauty, right? So you have something very precious like gold, but it is still allowing this rotor to rotate, right?
Absolutely. So you have the gold on one side, and then on the other side, this is really heavy, 21 karat. It helps us a lot, and it looks beautiful. You see the two colors, the silver color and then the gold color. Now we are in the engraving department. As you can see, we do engrave here a part of our Pneumatic Lunar. This is the balance bridge. It's completely engraved by hand. We put it here in this wooden tool holder, and then they can do the engraving by hand.
So this will rotate, and then they can apply pressure with their hand, and that will create these engravings.
You're so right. It's rotating. You can see it. It's like you can use it in each direction. So we engrave it to underline the craftsmanship in a Glashütte Original watch.
And each artisan, do they have their own slight unique flair, or are these all uniform in their look? How does that work? Is it?
I mean, if you
an expression here,
if you do something by hand, all parts are different.
So individual touch with each.
Absolutely. Now you saw the engraving, the hand engraving of the balance bridge. This is called the butterfly balance bridge. Butterfly because the two engraved sides where we have the, later on we put on the swan neck spring. This is the raw material. It's hand engraved. This is already with the chemical treatment, and this is the finished product. And he will put the finished product now onto the movement to make the watch tick and wake the watch up.
Finally coming alive after all these steps.
Coming alive, that's right.
So we're looking at a traditional technique here. Roland, you want to explain what's going on?
This is a technique we use to finish all the steel parts you see in the movement or on the dial side. In this case, we have a tourbillon cage, and this is now finished by hand with a tin stick and some diamond powder and some diamond liquid. You have it inside here, and she's like polishing it. That it's called afterwards. It's called the black polishing.
Sure.
And this is for the. In this case, we have the tourbillon cage, but we do it with our swan neck springs. We do it with almost all the steel parts in the watch.
All these tiny components are getting this treatment, and you're looking at this friction that's being applied, so that's going to, after a period of time, do you know how long this action needs to go forward to?
I mean, it depends on the finishing.
The component?
But our quality standard is very high, so this could be that it takes 1 day.
Wow.
You cannot remove too much, because then the technical or the function is not given anymore. So we need to be very, very careful.
And this is where you start to see that separation between many different brands, where you're getting into these highly finished components where you're not just assembling a watch, but everything is going to this additional level of scrutiny to really look the part.
Teddy, we are in the assembly department now, where now finally the final and the finished movement gets the dial on, the hands on, and at the end we put the movement into the case. So the casing is done here in this department with all the high quality standards we have, and we will start with figure out when our panorama date on the CQ jumps, because then we know exactly that's midnight.
It's for hand alignment, that is helpful.
And we can set the hand on midnight, on 12 o'clock.
Quite helpful when you have a date that large to make sure you're in the right position, huh?
That's the uniqueness of Glashütte Original with the panorama date, and we are very, very happy having the CQ with the panorama date, because it's really easy, not only for the assembling, but for the clients.
Exactly. And you're always putting down this protective film beforehand, so there's no scratching that could take place.
You're so right, yeah. And now she's adjusting the height, so without touching the dial, we cannot have any slight changes to the left side or to the right side, otherwise the timing is not correct. So this is really something we need to really watch out, and it needs to be very, very dedicated to the hand setting.
And throughout every single step of the process, dust is our enemy, because once this gets cased up, there is no going back.
There's no going back. We need to uncase it again. We need to clean it again. Now, if you see the crown, and on the tube of the crown, you can see the red fitting ring on the tube. The red fitting ring shows us that the crown is unscrewed. So whenever the client unscrews the crown, he can see it with this indicator. That's why everybody, for a diving watch, it's very, very crucial that you always check again that the crown is definitely screwed. The case bag is then a case bag, of course. This is screwed down. We have a special force to screw down the case bag. In this case, that's a CQ panorama date. So we need to do it for a water resistance reason. Otherwise, for the panoramic lunars, we just see it without 300 meters or without a waterproof control. So now we fully cased the CQ panorama date, and we did screw the case back. Watch is almost ready, but only almost. Now we start with our waterproof control, which is in a different department. I'm going to show you that. We have different requirements. One is a German industry norm, and the other one is an international industry norm. Teddy, now we are in a testing lab where we do our waterproof tests for the CQ model, and as you know, we do an ISO test. But this is not enough for a German watch brand. We also do an additional test. That's the DIN, a German industry norm test, which is even more stress test for the watch. So this guarantees that the watch has the highest quality and all the standards we are above. So we're going to show you the process, and we start with the waterproof machine. So first we start the waterproof test in our lab. We put in the whole watch, and the mass flow device puts in some air around the case, and it always stays the same air. When we see a flow and a change, there's something wrong, because then the air goes into the case and we can see that there's a little leak somewhere.
So it's a way to test those seals on the watch case itself.
Absolutely. And this is from 0.5 to 2 bar. Yep. Now we go there, we do the real water test. By the way, this is done for all the CQ models. There we put on a pressure of 37.5 bar. For a minimum of 2 hours. So now you could see that the water is floating, so we can make sure that there is no air inside the whole testing device. Now pressure goes on up to 37.5 bar. So now we take out the watch head from the water, and we still do not know if there is a leak or not. We close the dryer. This is to remove all the water from outside. So now the case is completely dry from outside, and we need to take it out. We put it on a heating plate, and the heating blade is heating up to 40-45 degrees Celsius. And to ensure that there is no humidity inside the watch, this is
to test condensation.
To test condensation that's in water.
So no moisture will form on the underside of the crystal
Of the crystal, exactly. So this normally takes 1 minute, and then we can detect if the watch is waterproof or if we have a leak somewhere, and we could see a condensation underneath of the sapphire crystal.
And one thing I want to stress here is that this is just scratching the surface for your tests for these watches, especially the Pano date. The interesting thing here is you also have a standard internally called the excellence test, where you're going to be testing these watches over 24 days. Temperature tests, power reserve, testing the full duration, positional tests. All of this is being done before these watches go out. So that's remarkable to think about. So Roland, we've had a long day. We've seen the process of producing these watches. Now it's time to get into the details of these amazing creations. So I think one thing that's important to discuss at the beginning is you have 5 key pillar collections. And this encompasses an idea where somebody that's maybe looking at this brand can find a distinct identity in many of these different collections and something that might be better for them. So where do we want to begin? In front of us here, we have some key pillars in your vintage series. So do maybe want to start there?
So let's start with our 60s chronograph annual edition. Annual edition means that we just produce it for 1
single year. Yeah.
It's not a limited piece, but it's only produced for 1 year. You can see the dial. With the dial, we have a dégradé, like grayish, and outside there's a dégradé in black.
So this outer circumference, really dark, rich black, and then as it gets to the dial center, we'll start to transition into almost this kind of charcoal gray, but light color that really kind of transitions well. Then the texture is beautiful as well.
I think the texture, the strap fits perfectly on that watch. And this is an automatic movement automatic chronograph.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful watch. And then when you're playing with this texture, with the strap, it does kind of make it more of this casual. And this is emblematic of, as we're talking about the 1960s, this is really what this goes back to, and paying honor to your history and reverence to that past. Transitioning to another decade, but another model as well, we have your 70s. Now, one thing I want to dwell on here is just the concept that when you look at a watch, there is, sure, the dial, there's the movement, but then there's also your case silhouette, and what does it project out? Integrated column wheel chronograph with your panorama date. This has all of the touches of uniqueness that I think are really cool to talk about the details even further.
So details of the watch. I mean, that's our caliber 37. You mentioned it, the column wheel, but on top there's a flyback, the flyback function. This is especially done for the caliber 37. And there we have a dial, a greenish with the degradé outside. You can see it is like outside going back in the center, and is a bit more than a light green in the middle.
Panorama date at 6 o'clock, power reserve indicator. Also, when you're talking about wearability on the wrist, I find this quite wearable despite it having more of the square architecture. I've never really worn anything else like it, but still pretty remarkably wearable, and you find these kind of integrated style watches where they start to potentially wear a little bit larger. In this case, I think you're doing a great job in making this accommodating for more wrists out there.
Absolutely, and like with the 70s, when I started, we were discussing about the 70s. What should we do with the 70s? And I found that this piece is brilliant for doing not only limited editions, but also showing the people with a unique case style that is something really special, something different Glashütte Original presents, on top with the panorama date.
Moving along to another watch, this is a watch that I always think about when discussing your brand. Now this year celebrating an important anniversary of 20 years. And whenever I position this watch, I talk about the dial, I talk about moon phase, which is very emblematic of this brand, but also the value for money that you're getting from the movement here. The finishing on this movement, I would say it's arguably not just the best in Germany for this price segment, but perhaps anywhere for the price segment. It's a really phenomenal watch. This is your Panamatic Lunar.
Panamatic Lunar is, of course, a beautiful dial. The panorama date fits perfectly with the moon phase. You can see that's a balance on the dial, and that's very, for us, of course, beautiful watch. The dial and now the movement. Movement is produced completely in-house. You have seen all the different steps today. It goes from hand engraving to a gold rotor, 21 karat gold on the oscillating mass. Like all parts done in-house. Beautiful, as you said, 20 years anniversary this year, which makes us very proud, and that's iconic piece for Glashütte Original.
And to give some reasoning behind that claim earlier, because that was a pretty bold claim. You talked about the 21 karat gold weight, which for this price segment is rare. Hand engraving on the balance bridge, double regulator, swan neck regulator. There's just so many touches of detail in the finishing across the 3/4 plate, the rotor, how it has the recessed track to rotate and be off of the center axis. There's just so many of these details that I think are just beautiful about this watch that when you're looking at stacking it up against the competition, it really does sing.
And now on this model we have attached the steel bracelet. Yeah. The watch comes, of course, with a leather bracelet too, or with a textile. But now, when we have this steel bracelet, you can see we have a fine adjustment on the steel bracelet. Like we can really, if you wear the watch and the watch is getting too tight, you can extend it, or you just go down and make it a bit more smooth to your wrist.
So your logo is acting as like a button.
The logo is acting as a button.
Very discreet.
This is something we need to mention, because these people sometimes forget about this watch.
Typically, you don't see micro adjustment like that on a dress watch either, so it's
Absolutely.
a nice little add. Moving along to another piece that's very crucial to your history, looking at the Senator collection. Can you walk us through this?
Senator collection. It's a very nice collection. The name mentions it. But this piece, that's a unique piece. It's a chronometer. You know, there's a rich history about chronometers produced in Germany. And we try not only the optic and not only the dial, but we also tried to kind of keep the style of a marine chronometer on this wrist watch. So whenever you see the bezel, this is an outstanding bezel. It makes the dial a bit more brighter. When we talk about the movement, we are talking about silver plating by friction. This is something we do in-house, and when you see the surface of the movement, you can really see it. It's very nice, very fine, but it is also a bit of grainy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It has almost like this blasted texture to it, which I think is very unique. And I also love how the dial is almost like a window to the reverse side with the movement itself, with some incredible finishing, and just in the same lineup as you're looking at, the Senator collection and looking back to your past, you have this really attention to detail when it comes to precision. The countdown power reserves, that's almost the inverse to the norm. And then also when you have your stop seconds, when you pull out the crown, it will then jump back to the less distance traveled to go back to that reset point. So very much in mind with precision across every single element when you're talking about marine chronometers. That's at the corner, or the
absolutely.
cornerstone of that.
It's at a corner, and if you see the minute hand is jumps.
Mm-hmm.
When you adjust the watch, it jumps from one to the next index. So this is really something special because a second is already set,
mm-hmm.
and now you can precisely set also the minute hand. Means the watch really starts at a 0, and you can feel it when you turn the crown. There's a little.
It is a graduation.
You have this little feeling that.
Slight tactile feedback that you're feeling
exactly.
as you rotate. Very unique. Very unique. Another watch that I want to talk about, and when you look, we're in Glashütte. If we had to put it in a box, which I don't think we should, but it's very much about traditional watchmaking. Dive watches were an invention of the mid-20th century, and it's perhaps maybe not the first thing we think about when we think of Glashütte, but your history has a lot to say about dive watches, and if there's one watch that in the last 5 years from your brand that has taken off like crazy, it's the CQ.
So with the CQ, there was, the story with the CQ is easy. We have our own watch museum, and we went there to see what kind of watches we did produce in the past, and then we follow a CQ, not a CQ at that time, of course, but a diver's watch. It's a 1969 diver's watch produced in 1969, and we took this piece as the original of a diver's watch for Glashütte Original.
Mm-hmm.
So when we built the case, the diameter of course changed, but all the angles and all the form of the case is like the same from the original diver's watch. On top, of course, there's our caliber 36 with a power reserve of 100 hours and a gold oscillating mass with 21 karat. We have a bezel, a turning bezel, and there with the bezel, this is also something we need to explain to people. The bezel turns very smooth because we have a ceramic teeth underneath of the bezel with 2 ceramic balls. Like this is really something you can feel, and we are very proud of that. So it was an invention from the team at Glashütte Original.
And how I always try to frame this watch is, sure you have a lot to choose from in the dive watch segment, but I think you have some characteristics here that are unconventional for a dive watch, talking about the panorama date and just the finishing of the movement itself. When I think of dive watch, you think of utility, right? You don't think of artisanal finishing.
Right.
So this is where you can really see that take place when you can flip it around. Of course, you have your 39 millimeter variants as well. We won't have that panorama date, but many to get lost in within the CQ. This collection has really been burgeoning over the last few years and now really a key pillar.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're very proud of it.
And to finish off, so we looked at a Panamatic Lunar, now a Luna.
The Luna. The Luna is here now. So the watch comes, the lady watch with the panorama date, and you can see the little detail here. We have an oval panorama date window that's more feminine and fits perfectly this watch. And this watch comes with a leather strap attached with an exchangeable system. So whenever ladies want to wear a different color, they can inter-exchange it very easy.
Roland, thank you very much for a very eventful day. When I think of this brand, I think of German watchmaking. I think of also attention to detail, artisanal finishing, and there's almost like a level of independence and also pride. If you come to Glashütte, you see that the streets here, the very limited amount of streets there are, you can feel that there's like a pride that goes all the way down to the core of what this brand is all about, and appreciate really the walkthrough here and seeing what goes on behind the doors of Glashütte Original.
It was a great pleasure. I have showed you many of our workshops, and for me as a watchmaker, this is of course it makes my heart laugh. It makes me smile. I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the people here, because whatever they work on, it's a beautiful product, and we need to show you the world and help you for doing it with your team. And thank you very much for being our guest today.